two children, Danielle and Timothy Jr., who both teach English currently in a mission team in China. And for those of you that are dog lovers, he has a basset hound by the name of Brewski. So I'll let him explain whatever the specifics are behind that, but right now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to Tim Sutherlin.
Hey guys, good morning. So good to see everybody today, and I'm so grateful that you guys came out today. Is this on? Yeah. Okay, good. I'm really grateful that you all showed up today. You know, there's a lot of stuff we can do on a Saturday, right? It's our one day to maybe sleep in a little bit, mow the lawn, or whatever we do. But for whatever reason, you guys showed up here today. And that's what I love about the church. I love the church because God has changed our lives, but then we get to change other people's lives. And that's why you're here today. That's why we go to a midweek service, is we want to get strength. That's why we go to a Sunday afternoon leaders meeting, is we need strength, but we have a heart that wants to help other people. We want to be an answer. So I just wanted to start off to thank you for being here. And I don't take that lightly. I value your time and what you've decided to do with your time, and I hold that in high esteem today. But I want to thank Steve and Jackie for bringing me up to LA. Steve and Jackie are just wonderful people. They came to Colorado just for a little bit, and I was so disappointed when Steve got up to do the communion in Denver and told the whole church he's actually getting ready to leave. I'm like, what do you mean you're leaving? You just got here. You can't do that to me. But I'm really glad they get to be here in LA. It is an obvious fit for them, and I've heard nothing but great things about the way they lead the church with a lot of heart, a lot of passion, a lot of skill. It's just so encouraging, so I want to thank them for bringing me out. Plus, Steve's just a cool guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you not like this guy? I'm always watching him on Facebook. He's always doing, jumping out of airplanes or going to rock concerts or whatever he does. He's always got these cool pictures. It's the kind of guy I want to be, right? But I want to also bring you guys greetings from the Denver Church of Christ. Things are going really well in Denver. We've had a great turnaround the last several years. Just got through on Sunday sending a team out to Grand Junction. Kind of a new team. No full-time ministers on the team. They're going to stream in a sermon every Sunday from John Lusk. They've got a couple of college intern types that they're helping out that are going to be on the campus there. But we're trying a new model of church planting.
That's great.
And, so if you can, keep Grand Junction, Colorado in your prayers. Pretty close to California, actually. Kind of on the western edge of Colorado. So yeah, it's good to be in LA. I'm missing my wife. Been away from her for almost 2 weeks now. Killing me.
Wow.
But she's a wonderful woman. She's going to join me here in a few days. And then we're going off to Bangkok to do this seminar out there. Kind of work with the Bangkok church for a couple of weeks. And then I get to go see my two wonderful little kids that live in China. They live in Guangzhou, which is near Hong Kong. They both teach English, and they're on a mission team out there. And it's just fun to get to go see them. My little girl just got married a year and a half ago. Got to walk her down the aisle, cried the whole time. It was really cool. But God is good, right?
Yeah.
And last night we talked about innocence. I told the group last night that I did a prayer walk in my old neighborhood. I got to do the first in-motion consultation in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Now that may not mean much to you, but to me it meant a lot because that's where I grew up. And I went there as a little kid, first grade, walked in, and so I went back the other day and I prayed around my elementary school. I think it's been there like 60 years. Really neat school. And I just prayed about my life and about God working in my life. And the thought occurred to me about my innocence. I thought, such an innocent kid back then, right? You're just a little guy. My dad used to shave our heads. He was using the Marine Corps and stuff. But, life was just good. Everything we did was fun. We'd get on our bicycles and just ride around all day long. Maybe come home for a PBJ at noon, and then we're off again, right?
Yeah.
And then as I prayed more and more, I walked by my old house. I just started thinking about all the damage that began to happen in my life. Some of it wasn't my fault, right? I was abused as a child. There are things that happened to me that I had nothing to do with. But then I also had a very sinful nature. I had sinful desires inside my heart that began to flourish. And by the time I left Virginia Beach in 1974, I was an absolute wreck. And I moved to Indianapolis, and by the grace of God, Mike Hayes started knocking on my front door for 3 different years. walking through my yard, knocking on the door, bold as a lion, invite me to soul talks. And I actually told him once, I said, Mike, I can't go on Tuesday nights. That's when I walk my dog. I actually told him that. You believe that? And he was so patient, like, okay, Tim. You know, he'd come back again and again. And by the grace of God, I finally became a Christian, right? Not knowing what I was doing hardly, just dumber than a brick. But God is so patient and good to us.
Amen.
And I wanted to ask you guys a question as we get started. You know, in my life, there are different things that broke my innocence. I remember the first time I read in a newspaper article about a woman that shot her own children. I don't know how old I was, but I remember that broke my innocence. It was the first time that it occurred to me, like, something just wouldn't connect in my brain. Like, why would that happen? I'm just curious from you, as much as you'd like to share for a second, what breaks your innocence? What was it in your life that maybe you remember thinking, my life is different now? Something's broken. Yes?
With my father, I began to be unfaithful to my mom while still at home. And she's joining now. I think it was during my early high school. Yeah.
Early high school. Yeah. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were raising me. Yes.
I think for me it was feeling like in middle school, like my friends who were doing lives and living, like doing everything you're not supposed to do in life, were getting everything that they wanted, and I had been raised to only do what's right. I felt frustrated, like I wasn't getting anything I wanted, so I got really angry and changed.
Yeah. That's a great way to say it. You know, something disconnects to us, and then our response is anger, frustration. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes.
I was like 6, and I found magazines, adult magazines that were my stepfather's at that point. I remember I'm going, this is kind of weird.
Yeah.
6 years old.
Yep. At 6. I know people after 50 years of that can still in their mind have the same image they saw when they were 6 years old. That image has not left for over 50 years. It's amazing. Thank you. Anybody else? Other things? Yes.
I think in high school for me, all my friends were from single parent households. And my mom and dad had been together for years, so that was strange to me that families didn't stay together.
Yeah. The first time you heard about a divorced family. Interesting. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
I don't know, I don't know if I can put it, first of all, I never thought about this topic, but I think probably, when you reach that age where you first see your parents just like, go at each other's throats basically, and and then that sort of becomes the norm.
Yep. I can remember sitting with my little brother. We had stairs that went downstairs. I guess that's what all stairs do, is they go downstairs. Sorry. But there's a wall for half of the stairway, right? And I can remember with my little brother sitting behind this wall. I was maybe 5 or 6, watching my parents do that for the first time, just going after each other. And we just sat there and watched it for I don't know how long. Indelibly marked on my heart that the two people that I found the most security in were now very insecure. Remember to this day, yes, sir.
I was just going to piggyback on that. I think very young, trying to figure out I didn't grow up with my dad, so when my mom and my dad fought for the first time, I opened the door and there was blood coming out of her nose. So the abuse that he had on my mom, and then maybe the same year, spending time at his house with the wife he was currently with, seeing the same thing. So that just really kind of painted this picture in my head,
Sure.
As a 3 or maybe 4-year-old. Just wow, this is violent.
Thank you for sharing that. Guys, sometimes we share those things, and at the beginning when we share, those come out as factual information. I've been in Bible studies with people where they share that factual of what just happened. But those things are deeply embedded in our souls. Those are areas that Satan, in his deception, where he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And that's what those things are. They're deeply embedded in our souls. And what I love about Jesus is that he comes to give us freedom from those kinds of things. Even things that aren't our fault. We're still in bondage to that. And, and then on top of all that, we talk about breaking innocence, then we become those people. We become exactly what our parents were. I can remember one time when my son was a little guy, he was crying about something, and I said, in my frustration, I called him Timmers, his nickname. I said, Timmers, stop crying, or I'm going to give you something to cry about. And as soon as I said those words, I tried to grab them back, because it was the exact spirit that my dad gave me. And here I am, a Christian, doing parenting classes, and I'm saying that to my son into his soul. And I realized that day that I'm my dad. I've got my dad inside of me as a natural self. If I don't pay attention to my heart, my soul, I'm going to become my dad. And maybe even more so. Then on top of all that, we become sinners. We have issues like pornography. In the churches of Christ, about 50% of the men have some level of struggle with pornography. Half of our men. And in the particular church I'm a part of, it's very difficult to get those men to talk about that. It's a very shaming phenomenon. It's very difficult to get them talking. And if they talk, at most we get them to talk at this kind of level, as if it's a behavior only. We have smoking, we have drugs, we have a lot of prescription drug abuse going on. A lot of people that start doing prescription drugs for a knee operation or whatever, and then they get hooked. Very silent thing. We have a big weight problem in our church in Denver. Colorado's like the #1 state in the nation on healthiness and all that good stuff. We're really good, but boy, it's starting to creep into our church. We have several people that are morbidly obese. They're well over 100 pounds overweight. And nobody says anything about it to them. Rarely. And if they do, it's a very offhanded comment, and there might be a response like, yeah, I need to go on a diet, or yeah, I've been trying to do this. But no one's ever touched into that phenomenon in their life. No one's ever touched into the hurt of being overweight and why it's there. And these are people that dearly love friends, great Christians. I have one brother I love him to death. He just had a second heart attack. He's way too young to be doing this heart attack thing. He's got little kids. And we just started a weight loss group with InMotion. I'm going to share about InMotion in a few minutes, so stay with me here. But we just started a weight loss group, and 2 people in the weight loss group have had heart procedures since we started the group. I mean, they're on the edge of, man, we got to do something about it to save your life. And so yeah, we have that. We have relationship problems, right? Bitterness, anger, resentment. A lot of us deal with that as we get older. You ever go back home to visit mom and dad, and you're like a little kid again? I used to do that. I'd go back to Virginia Beach and visit mom and dad, and I'd walk in the house, I'd open up the refrigerator, and it looked exactly like it did when I was a little kid. And I kind of like shrink down to this little 5-year-old, And my brothers are there. We do the same kind of ins and outs with each other, the same kind of hurts, the same dynamics sit there. I'm 57 years old, and I'm still having these same dynamics. And I'm trying harder. I want to be bold. I want to be righteous. But I still live with that stuff. There's all sorts of childhood issues that go on. My son and I got into a fight that was a year and a half ago. Right after my daughter's wedding, we went to a bar and had a beer together. It's supposed to be one of those really cool bonding times. You ever have those things? And it just didn't work out. He started saying something, I had to jump on in there, like hammer him on it. And before we know it, we're in this really cool bar, like punching each other. We weren't really punching, but we were just like arguing. And at one point in the argument, it's really cool with my son. If I want the truth out of him, I got to really jazz him. I got to really poke him. If I get him upset, he'll finally start like telling me what he's thinking. So I got one of those going. And he said, Dad, you don't know what it's like to grow up in a conservative Christian home. Right? We were like, he's a kingdom kid. And I go, and it was the first time I ever heard him say that. I was like, wow, you're right. And then I thought, I got to come back. So I said, well, you don't know what it's like to grow up in a dysfunctional Methodist family, do you? So there, you can just see his little wheels spinning. Oh yeah, Uncle Chris, Uncle Craig, Uncle Curdy. Oh yeah, I can see that. Oh boy, So, but we still do that. And guys, here's what I'm realizing is that in our churches, the ICOC, and guys, I love the ICOC. I'm never going to leave the church.
Yeah.
So when I say something that's like a little bit derogatory, don't take me for being a bad guy, okay?
Sure.
But our churches are kind of based on behavioral thought.
Yeah.
That's just the way we are. And that's what got a lot of work done back in the day. And in this day, is people that, let's go do this thing despite whatever happens. I'm going to go charge forth. So we've taken churches into Tokyo and Bangkok and all these crazy places. That I get that, okay? But to the deficit of that has been we haven't taken a good hard look at the inside of our members, of ourselves.
Yeah.
As a history, as a culture, we haven't done that. So I wanted to come back and say, let's do that also. We can do both. I think Barack Obama said that I can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can do that. Okay? And as a matter of fact, Paul, or Jesus, some of his harshest words were directed at that concept. In Matthew chapter 23. Would somebody turn and read that for me, by the way? Matthew chapter 23, verses 25 through 28. This is kind of a little devotional time here, just to get us moving, okay? Matthew 23, verses 25 through 28.
Okay, it says, "Woe to you, teachers of law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisees, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside also fully clean. Woe to you, teachers of law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness."
Thank you. You know, Jesus left some of the harshest words that he ever spoke directed at people that wouldn't look to the inside.
Right.
It wasn't just the Pharisees. I mean, they were probably the greatest example of that as an institution. But that's convicting to me. Jesus says we got to deal with the inside of our lives. That's what God's interested in. He wants your heart. And at In Motion, we really strive hard to, we talk about idols of the heart. We don't just talk about addictions. You know, if you could imagine a great big iceberg, what percentage of that iceberg is above the water? It's about 10%, right?
Yeah.
That's what you see. That's a pretty big piece. And we imagine that 10% being things that we see, like addictive behavior, selfishness, drunkenness, drug abuse. We see the 10%. What God sees is that 90% below. He sees the idols of the heart. And I love that concept because it keeps things simple for me. And I believe there's basically 3 idols of the heart that we have to deal with. I believe every sin that you have in your life, if you think long and hard enough, you can probably narrow that down to three idols. The idol of comfort, the idol of significance, or the idol of control. And it's really helped me a lot when I sense in my spirit that I've sinned, or somebody comes up to me and says, "You sinned." My wife talks to me or whatever. It really helps me to spend some time and ferret that down to, what was that? For me, it's usually significance. That there's a need in my heart to prove significance. Sometimes it's a comfort issue for me. It's rarely a control issue. I don't like controlling stuff, but that's what we try to do at Emotion, is help people get down to those core idols of the heart. And we all know what God says, you know, I want to own your heart.
Yeah.
We surrender our hearts to God.
Yeah.
Jesus is supposed to sit on the throne of our hearts. It's a biblical concept that, you know, John Calvin once said, the human heart is an idol factory.
Wow.
We're going to worship something in our hearts. And it really helps me just to think in terms of what's on the throne of my heart right now. What is that? And if I can grab one of those 3, again, usually for me it's significance, then I can take that to God. I can take it to the scriptures and, you know, God, help me please to find my significance only in you. only in the cross. That only at the cross, at the foot of the cross, am I worthy. Nothing else I do. And anytime I try to bump myself up to be significant, that's just stupid. It's just worthless. It's out of your hands at that point, God. Please let me stay in your hands for significance. So we do a lot of that in Emotion. We really try to dig in there. Here's some of the things the Bible says about weakness, by the way. Idols. Paul says, hey, when I'm weak, then I'm what? Strong. Paul held weakness up.
Yeah.
He did. He held it up.
Right.
We fight that. I don't want to be weak. Paul says, when I'm weak, then I'm strong. Peter says, hey, we're all like withering grass and fading flowers. That's not very endearing, is it? Like, dang. I'm at best, I'm a bunch of withering grass, and I'm like one of those flowers. You buy the white flowers, they look really good the first couple days, and then they just start doing that thing. And then for like a week, you kind of wonder, when's she going to get rid of those things? Right?
They start to smell.
Yeah, they smell bad, and she's like, bless her heart, she wants to keep them around to make me feel better. But that's what Peter says I am. I'm just kind of like this flower that's kind of fading. James said it pretty well. He said, hey, life is but a mist.
Yeah.
I can remember years ago, the preacher was up there preaching on this one, and he pulls out one of those big water bottle things, and he goes, mist. And I'm like 28 years old or 30 or something. And I'm thinking, what's he talking about? My life's but a mist. And now I look at that, and I think, God, she's so right.
Yeah.
57 years old. I've lost both my parents. My oldest sister is now almost 70. Oh my gosh. My sister. My brothers are in their mid to late 60s. They're retiring. Our lives are but a mist. And then Jesus, he comes in, he says, hey, I didn't come for the righteous. I came for sinners. And he said, hey, it's not the healthy that need a doctor, it's the sick. We are weak people. So I just want to ask you another question now. You got to help me out on this one, okay, guys? When you look at Jesus, you look at our weaknesses, we're like, yeah, you got it, Tim, you nailed that one. I'm a weak person. But when you look at Jesus now and his interaction with people, what are some of the most famous, in your mind, healings that he did? When he looked at weak people and he changed their lives, what are some that stand out in your mind the most? Yes?
When he empowered the man by the well, and he was able to like get up and go.
The woman at the well?
Not the.
Oh, the invalid.
The invalid.
Yeah. The guy for 38 years, right? The guy had been an invalid for 38 years, making a lot of excuses.
By the what is it?
By the
Water.
pool.
Yeah, that's cool. After 38 years, we get people in Emotion that have been done. They've been hurting for a long, long time. I have a brother I'm helping right now. He's been addicted to pornography for 25 years. He's a great man, very faithful man. He leads a ministry in our church, another kind of ministry, but for 25 years. And I look at him, and the guys like Tim, I've always been this way. So we look at that guy. I said, 38 years, you got 13 years on this guy. Come on, we can do this. Yes?
The woman who touched Jesus' cloak, who had believed for many years, and she had faith that he could heal her, and now Jesus saw her faith.
That's right.
And even though he first wasn't seeking to heal her, he healed her.
That's right. She's a gutsy woman. She spent everything she had, by the way, right?
Yeah.
We have people that spend thousands of dollars on therapy. Thousands of dollars. Several different therapists. This woman was a gutsy woman. She put herself in a potentially embarrassing situation with a guy who was very busy. And she thought, if I could just touch the edge of his cloak, maybe something will happen. What else, Steve?
For me, the centurion, just not having really a religious background or anything, but having heard of Jesus, having enough faith that Jesus didn't even need to go attend to his kid.
That's right.
Just Jesus saying it was enough for him.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. Long distance healing before the internet, right? The guy got it done. It was amazing. Yes.
The guy that was possessed by so many demons that they had to just chain him up by the tombs and none of the chains could. I mean, that seems pretty hopeless. Like
Yeah.
the village just kind of gave up and went, just chain him up in the tombs and cross their fingers.
Yeah. And that's the sense you get about that guy, isn't it? That the townspeople had kind of been done with him. We're kind of done with this guy. So what are we going to do? Let's get him out in the cemetery and chain him down. You know, I see kids like this in the school that I work in all the time. They cut themselves. They spend a lot of time cutting themselves. And we have girls right now that they cut themselves so often and so anonymously that their parents have to do what they call bikini searches. So the kid goes home, and once a week the girl has to put on a bikini and go out in front of her parents to let them like examine her body, because they'll like hide the cutting. It's so bad. Cutting's not anything new. It happened back in the scriptures.
Wow.
It's a hurt that people have. So yeah, the demoniac. I love that guy though, because what did he do afterwards? He just ran out and told everybody.
Yeah.
That's one thing about In Motion that we've really found, is that when we help people find freedom, they're off the wall charts Christians, disciples. You don't have to tell them, hey, you should be evangelizing. You know, if the only time you evangelize is when someone tells you to, or the church has a big campaign going, there's something wrong. The normal response of our life, the natural response is looking at ourselves and go, I'm out of control and Jesus saves me. Oh my gosh. A couple years ago I found some great freedom from an issue with lust in my mind. I had a real problem with lust in my mind. And I had gotten to the point where I was starting to tell people, this is just the way I am.
Right.
I even came up, God forbid, I'm sorry to have to share this, but I'm going to. I want to be honest. I came up with the phrase, lust is my friend. And I actually told brothers that. I meant it in a way like, that's how close I was to it. And brothers would be like, oh yeah, thanks for sharing, bro, appreciate that. How about them Broncos, you know? And that's the kind of conversations, these were with some of the elders of the church, some of the best brothers I know. That's kind of where we were in the church with this. And thank God, one day I actually mentioned it to my wife. She asked me, well, how are things going for you? And I mentioned that phrase. And she looked at me, she goes, well, Tim, you need to kill that friend. And the scales fell off. And I could see clearly, like, oh my gosh, I bought into this big fat lie of Satan for years now. For years I bought that lie. And by the grace of God, He granted me repentance. Repentance is a gift from God. And the scales fell off and my life changed radically. And I was running around after that telling people like, oh my gosh, I got to tell you about God, what He did for me. I'm like this little young Christian guy, been in the church for 30 plus years, and I'm running around telling people about it. I thought, this is the normal Tim. This is the normal running around sharing my faith. I'm glad we invite people to church. That's a good thing. I think invite people to church. But guys, church is not my faith.
That's right.
Church is where I go to express my faith. It's where I go to connect to other people. It's where I go to serve other people. But church is not my faith.
Right.
My faith is what God has done inside my heart.
Right.
What He's done for me. That's my faith. My faith is my Lord Jesus Christ and His perfect work on the cross. That's my faith. That's what I want to share with people. And that's what that demoniac did for me. He reminded me that the normal response of Jesus working in my life is running around telling people. What are some other miracles that have really changed your life? Other healings in the Bible? Yes?
It's kind of a healing of the heart, but when the adulterous woman was going to be stoned, and then, Jesus was like, go and leave your life of sin. But also in the middle of it, He's telling everybody else, he who has not sinned, cast the first stone. So not only is she getting forgiven and being able to heal from that psychologically, but everybody else has to look inside and see kind of where they're at.
Great point. Yeah. So Jesus not only takes care of us, but He uses us as this huge illustration for other people. I can remember years and years ago as a teenager walking through the mall with a couple of my hoodlum friends, and we were stoned. And I can remember walking by, and this woman was sitting in a chair, and as I walked by, she just looked up at me. She said, think about Jesus. I was like, oh my gosh, what was that? And I just walked away, and I could feel myself like shaking, and I was with my friends with all our long greasy hair and, pot down in our socks, to hide it from people. I could not shake that one comment
Wow.
for the rest of my life. Jesus would take our healings and begin to mirror it back for other people. It's incredible. I don't know who that woman was. She might have even been an angel of God. I don't know. But she said 3 words, think about Jesus. And she caught me at a point in my soul where that's all I could do. I was so mad at her. I couldn't get high again without like those words rolling through my brain. Other healings that you think about. Give me a couple more to work with here. Yes, sir.
Lazarus. He was dead for 3-4 days. And who knows where Jesus got him back from,
That's right.
where he was.
That's right. And the power of Jesus' words, right? What did he say? Lazarus, come forth. 3 words. Remember the widow who had the dead son?
Yeah.
They were on the way to the funeral and Jesus was coming into the city. They kind of crossed at the city gate. They could have just walked right by each other. Jesus was on a great mission. This woman was caught in her isolation and grief. She lost her only son. And they stopped. She arrested Jesus. And they stopped. And he said 3 words to the boy. 4 words. Young man, get up. Stop being dead. And the kid stopped being dead. It's an incredible thought. What else? What other healings really change your life?
It's only New Testament.
Only New Testament.
Now that made me think of the Old Testament. Was it Elijah, was the woman who just had nothing, and he told her to gather up all of the jars that she could, because she was completely without any money, and so that God provides, and so she was able to gather enough oil to sell and then take care. I think she had a young boy. How God provides, and sometimes we think that God doesn't provide for us.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you can make a case that Paul had a healing. He was in a certain state of mind, and then when Christ came and gave him that vision, then I think that set him on a course of healing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you bet. You bet. Steve. It's good to see you, Steve.
Oh, thanks.
Steve used to be my discipler guy way back in the day, like 50 years ago.
And I didn't ruin
Stevie! He did get me turned on to coffee. You've cost me thousands of dollars by that habit of yours.
Uh-oh.
I'm unrepentant. I would say the story of John 4, the miraculous revelation of Jesus into the life of the woman about what she was really, the lifestyle she was living. It kind of brought reality and transparency, put it all out on the table.
Right.
And she seemed so freed up after that.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Jesus can ask a question. Or maybe a couple of questions. His words, our lives are pretty complex, right? I love Jesus because he speaks simplicity into our complexity. And that's what he did with her. This woman was all complex, all these different husbands and all sorts of trust issues. He speaks simplicity right into her life. And he speaks with words that cut right to the core of who we are. And within one conversation, this woman backs away and says, I just got to go talk to somebody about this. This man has changed my life after one conversation. And the whole crowd comes out, the whole town comes out. They're like, what is going on here? That's the Jesus we serve. He is not any different today than he was 2,000 years ago. And at In Motion, we bank on that. We bank on the amazing, incredible words of Jesus to change our very hearts and to change our minds. Most people that we know at In Motion have bought into some very insidious lies.
Right.
And that's what's driving their behavior. Because Satan is who?
Liar.
He's a big fat liar.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's fat, but he's a big liar.
Big liar.
Deceiver.
He's a deceiver, and his native language is
Sin.
his native language is lying. That's his number one attack on us. His number one attack isn't like messing up your parking spot on your way to church. Oh, it's Satan. No, he's on my way today. His number one attack is lying. We have people come to Emotion that have believed all sorts of lies. One of the big ones that we deal with is once an addict, always an addict.
Right.
People throw that around like crazy. It's a big fat lie. There could be nothing further from the truth in the scriptures of once an addict, always an addict. We have lies like, one more time will satisfy.
Exactly.
That's a big one.
Yep.
Guys on pornography, one more time. Just if I could just, and that's how they go from looking at the swimsuit model and within several months to looking at child pornography. That's illegal.
Wow.
And they get arrested. I got a letter from a guy in jail the other day. He was a brother in our churches. And he's been in jail now for several years in a federal penitentiary for child pornography. And he wrote me this letter trying to, somehow I was supposed to get him out or something. I don't know what he wanted from me. But he started off kind of innocently just checking out pictures. And then he ended up downloading thousands of child pornography images. It's a big fat lie of Satan. One more time will satisfy. If I can just, one more time. We had a guy at In Motion, I shared this last night, that he raised his hand. He's an engineer, smart guy, smarter than I am. Which didn't say it a whole lot, but he raised his hand. He goes, Tim, I got to share with the whole group this. This guy's been a Christian 25 plus years. He goes, I've always believed there's an ought to room in heaven. And what's an ought to room? Well, an ought to room is where you go when you go to heaven. You go to a room where God sits down and tells you what you ought to have been doing in your life. And he said, I bought into that for years. I don't know where I got it from. It's not in the Bible anywhere. And we talked about it. Probably came from his dad, right?
Yeah.
But he formed his life around that. He's formed his ministry and his thinking around it. He works with a lot of people. He disciples lots of people. And that is one of those things that's formed how he approaches the gospel of Christ. The ought to room. So we cleared that one up, right? So I want to close out this devotional time just telling you about a brother. His name's Rick. He's our first guy that ever came to In Motion 3 years ago. We started In Motion about 3.5 years ago, as Steve was mentioning, kind of out of my own frustration. I was struggling with lust, and I just thought, you know what? I just don't want to die an old man like this. Got to do something about this stuff. Had many, many years of great success, and then different seasons of not. And so we started this ministry, and I was also kind of frustrated with what I saw in the churches. The paradigm back then was a good-hearted couple would grab some curriculum and would start a group. And it might last 5 to 6 months, and then there would be burnout, and it would just kind of fall apart. All sorts of notebooks laying on bookshelves. You ever notice that about your bookshelves at work? There's all these notebooks laying around from all these different seminars that you went to that were really good on the day. And then you get home, you try to do something with it, and it ends up a notebook on your bookshelf. Saw a lot of that going on. So we started it, and this guy Rick, I got a phone call from his mom, and she said, I don't know, I didn't know her at all. They're in a different region of the church. And she said, my son is getting ready to commit suicide. He's been in the hospital. He's a young man. And he said it's okay to share his story. He's a young man. He's like in his mid-20s, and he almost died from pancreatic poisoning from his alcohol abuse. He was in ICU for quite a while. And he's out now, but now he's trying to commit suicide. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, I don't either. Wow. So I said, I'm starting this ministry, bring him down. So he came with his mom and dad. And we didn't know what we were doing, guys. We started this thing 3 years ago from the get-go, and we were just fumbling around trying to do something. But Rick came, and we have 3 hallmarks that he really bought into. And I'm just going to end up sharing about those 3 hallmarks of In Motion. Then we'll take a quick break here. But we have 3 hallmarks. The first hallmark is renew your walk with God. And so we really double down on the fact that God's big. He's bigger than we are. He's more creative than we've ever thought about being. There's so much about God that we don't do well with. We don't think about. We don't venture into. We don't adventure ourselves. And so we really called Rick. He's raised in the church. And we called him, Rick, think about God in a different way. And we started sharing scripture with him and just trying to open his mind up. He was a kingdom kid, right? You never heard kingdom kids, they always say, yeah, I knew the answers to all the questions in the study.
Yeah.
They do that. They go through those studies. They've heard mom and dad talk about those things for like years. So they give them the studies, they know right what to say. They have God in a box. They've got him in the ICOC box.
That's right.
That's okay. That's what they know. It's better than like 98% of the rest of the world don't have any box for God. But that's a box. And, you know, we really call people like, God's great, He's big. Is there other ways that God thinks about things than the way you're thinking about things? My thoughts are higher than your thoughts. My ways are way bigger than your ways. So we called Rick to think about that. One of the conversations I had with Rick, he was, he said, I'm really mad at God, and I don't think He's real happy with the way I'm mad at Him. I said, well, let's look at Job. And we studied some things in Job. I said, Rick, if you went out in the mountains and you just yelled at God, what do you think might happen? He's like, I don't know. Okay, so maybe you need to do that. Maybe you need to get out somewhere and just talk to God and share with Him your complaints. Now, He may have a message for you, right? He may have some comeback, but He would like to hear from you. And his thought of God was a very proper, controlled, only tell God what's right, and don't open your heart up to God. We talked about how Job opened his heart wide to God. Now, Job got some discipling going on, but that's okay. There's a whole book on him now. That's pretty cool. So that's the first hallmark, is that we call people to walk with God in a new way. The second hallmark is you've got to work a program. That in motion is not enough for people. We meet for an hour and a half on Sundays. We have great things going on, but it's not enough. So we call people to work a program. And that can be one of anything. For Rick, his job actually got him into an outpatient alcohol rehab.
Wow.
That was pretty cool. Yeah. It was a good job he had, I guess. So he had to work it, though. And this is where people have a hard time, like I said last night. A lot of people come in motion like this. They come in, they got their hands at the side. And they're like, I'm here. Do something for me. Come on, need some help. And so what we say is you've got to work your program. You have to have something that guides you through the week. It can be a book. And we teach people how to find a good book, how to find the right kind of book that's going to help you. And we suggest different books. For some of our purity guys, we have a book that we really like. But we trust that the people have to find their own program. We call people to use maybe settingcaptivesfree.com. So has anybody ever been on that site before? Settingcaptivesfree.com. It's a free website. It's got no advertising, no solicitation. Somebody spent a lot of money putting this thing together. It's the Bible on steroids for recovery. They have 8 different programs, 60-day programs that you get on every morning for your issue. And you get online, and these studies are about 30, 40 minutes. You reply to things. You answer questions. They have one for purity, homosexuality, gambling. They have one for wives to support their husbands called the United Front. My wife did that one, and that was pretty cool. I was kind of scared, like, oh, great. Now she's getting into this thing with me. But it was really good. I mean, she came to me humbly like, Tim, you know, she was all humble from doing this program. So that was pretty cool. But there's 60-day programs that every morning you get on, and they even give you an online mentor. I got this guy, I think his name was Phil. Email me, hey Tim, it's Phil. I'm like, who are you? I'm your mentor. Any questions you have, just shoot me an email. I'll be praying for you. Then occasionally he'd get with me, hey, that was an interesting answer you gave, or what kind of answer was that? Or, you know, are you doing okay? I don't know where he lived. He could be down in Brazil somewhere. But they give you a free mentor.
That's awesome.
There's no follow-up. There's no solicitation for money. Nothing. Now, I will caution you with this with settingcaptivesfree.com. Don't go to them for your theological view on conversion. Just don't do that, because you're going to get in a big fight with them, and they're going to come after you and all these things. So I tell the people, don't even talk about your conversions. That's not what you're there for. And then don't talk to them about like predestination either. I did both those things. But it wasn't good. Yeah. I was going to become one of their mentors, and I had to go through a 120-day program to do it. And we got about 2 weeks into it. They started sending me all this stuff, and I just had to back out. But other than those 2 things, they're great for recovery. So that's working a program. Some people go to private counseling if they can afford it. Some people do other groups outside of In Motion. And what I tell them is, if that's working for you, then you should go ahead and do it. I don't have to agree with everybody's theology for something to be effective. So, yes.
Do you recommend 12 steps? The various ones out there?
I don't personally recommend them.
Okay.
I've gone through those myself. There are some serious philosophical underpinnings that I don't agree with and approaches. But again, if they can go in there and they can use it and it's effective, I'm fine. I will not tell people not to do anything. Unless it's going to harm them, obviously, or they're really naive or whatever. Young Christians, things like that, maybe not so good. But we do have some people that go to SA. And the reason with SA, Sexual Anonymous, is that there's some brothers that just don't want to be involved in the church mix because it's their social environment. It's where they live life, and they don't want to be. That's one reason we started In Motion. We wanted to protect people's dignity. So when people come to In Motion, nobody knows why you come there. The devotional times are anonymous. So people walk in, you could be there for any number of a dozen reasons. And because the old paradigm was after midweek, all the brothers walking downstairs to the basement, and everybody's like, yep, we know where those guys are going. And half of us guys are like, I ain't going to that group. I don't want to have that big old A on my
Well, there you go.
So yeah, I don't think many people of our group do AA. Celebrate Recovery is probably a lot more of a useful group for people.
How about Al-Anon, something like that?
The thing about those groups that's really good is they're very honest. I went to Al-Anon or ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics, years ago as a young Christian. And I was impressed with the fact that people were really honest. I didn't see that in my church at the time. There wasn't a raw honesty. I was like, dang, these people say what's on their mind. So, again, my gauge is effectiveness. That's my gauge. If it's effective for people and it's working, then how does it work for you? Is it sustainable in your life? Can you keep doing it and it being effective? Without the downsides to it. There's downsides. There's a lot of smoking. Some of those people are kind of creepy that can be going there. So if those are downsides that maybe not be good, then let's do something different. But yes.
Two things. Is setting captives free, is that also good for grief and loss, or is it just purity stuff?
They don't have a grief and loss. They have
Is it all kinds of addiction?
Yeah. So they have 8 different programs. Gambling, homosexuality, purity, support for wives. They have one on a 60-day study on the cross. Oh my gosh. I did that a couple months ago. 60-day study on the cross. They never even got to some of the things I thought they were going to get to. I was like, where's this verse? And they never got to that because it's a really good study. So yeah, just different addictions or different issues that people have. I think they have one for money. But they really double down on the scriptural approach, especially to the cross. They're very gospel laden.
And then, second of all, some of these 12-step programs, like you talked about, or that have been mentioned, they do teach that once an addict, always an addict. Like you introduce yourself as the addict that you are.
Exactly.
So then how does that fit within motion where you're saying, and I believe the Bible says that's not true. We're a new creation and we don't have to be defined by being an addict.
Exactly, and it doesn't fit. And so that's what we tell people is that here are some of the downsides. Here are some things you're going to hear that we don't buy into, that I don't think the scriptures buy into. So we don't have a lot of people that do AA, to be honest with you. Most people, it's just too rough of a crowd for them. And it's just like any book too. Like I tell them, when you go find a really great book, what you're doing is you're sitting down with an author who's a pretty smart guy or girl, and you're getting their best shot at life right now. You're getting some great time with somebody who's been able to verbalize and articulate some wonderful concepts. That's all it is some guy's take on it. And just like anybody else, that guy's not perfect. He's going to have some things you probably don't agree with. You should always we always reflect stuff back into the scriptures, right? So yeah, I mean, all sorts of pray Jesus in your heart issues can come up. But we just tell people, go to that source for your recovery. That's what you're there for. Don't go there to find somebody that agrees with you, everything you believe. And by the way, everything you believe probably ain't all right anyways. It's not like we're like these perfect people that have nailed everything down.
What?
Right? I hope that we're still humble and we're still approachable and God's still got things to teach us. And I hope there's still things that we think, man, I don't have it all down. That's one thing I love about the ICLC is when we used to do our publications, we put our worst stuff on the front page. I thought, any group that puts their worst stuff up on the front page, that's a good group. That's okay. Truth isn't bothered by people pushing on it. If it's true, you can hammer it, beat it, all you want. Truth is truth.
There you go.
One guy said the Bible is like an anvil that's worn out a lot of hammers. And I think that's what truth is. It's an anvil that can wear out a lot of different hammers. So God's not bothered by me pushing and shoving and asking questions. With a good heart, He's not. That's how new knowledge gets created, by the way. That's all theory is, by the way. Theory is simply a smart person finding things that work well, attaching words to those things. Other people come along and go, that's cool, like in counseling. Sigmund Freud, he came up with some really neat things. People saw it worked. They started doing it. They go, this is great. And they help people. And then somebody, Alfred Adler, comes along years later. He starts shoving against it and hitting it and striking it. And he comes up with some new ideas and new concepts that have never been discovered before. And then he's the hero for 5 or 10 years. And then B.F. Skinner comes along and he does some things. That's all theory is people pushing against knowledge and coming up with new stuff. And then I look at it as a Christian, I go, wait a minute. That stuff's been in the Bible for like a long time.
There you go.
So Aaron Beck, he's the big CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. That's what everybody's like, yay, this is the latest, greatest, this is the best stuff. And I look at that and go, Ephesians 4:17. Don't live like Gentiles anymore, the futility of their thinking and the hardening of their hearts. That's all CBT is. It's a combination of behavior, thinking, and they don't even really have much of the heart stuff in there.
Right.
And I'm thinking, you mean it took you guys 2,000 years to come up with that? Come on. Paul wrote about that to a bunch of Ephesian Christians a long time ago. So anytime I look at theory or stuff out there, if it works, I'll guarantee you I'll find it in the scriptures with you.
Yeah.
And I'll find it in a place that's colored and textured and has nuances that inspire and illustrate God in way better ways than their stodgy words that they use. I read some of this theory and I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I got a PhD and it's like reading your tax forms. You ever done your taxes by yourself? I'm an idiot. I still do my taxes by myself. Every year I swear I'm never going to do that again. But I read tax forms and I'm like, I don't know what that stuff means. Who are they writing this to?
Makes you appreciate your account, though.
Yeah, I just got to get one. I got to quit being so cheap. So I don't know where I got up. Oh, so we're talking about the programming, right? So everybody should have a program. If you don't have a program, you can still come. You're just not going to move very far. Because what programs do is they help align your thinking. They get our thinking back on track. They give us those moments. And then with Rick, the third thing was engage a mentor. That's our third hallmark, is engaging a mentor. You have to engage a mentor. All recovery is socially based in nature. You just don't recover without other people. It's just the way it is. That's the way God made us. If you want to argue that, go for it. Don't do it with me. Recovery is socially based. And so we have to engage a mentor. And here's what we do, is we talk to people about making meaning out of it again. That we quit making meaning out of stuff. We don't make meaning out of our mentorship anymore. Oh yeah, I got a disciple. Yeah. Well, if somebody followed you with a video camera and looked at your discipling times, what are they going to hear and see? Oh, we get together once a month. Maybe we share a little bit with each other. Then we talk about the whatever. We talk about you got to have somebody that gets you. Now, we have some people at Emotion that don't even use a Christian mentor. And I'm okay with that.
For this part.
For what?
For In Motion.
Yeah, for In Motion, yeah. So, yeah, let me clarify that because people start giving me bad looks and everything. For your recovery time, you got to find somebody that'll walk with you, that understands you, is patient, kind of knows what it's like to be on a journey, and is going to walk you through some of the dark times. And again, there are some people that use other friends at work or a family member or somebody else to help them. That's okay, because my goal is effective change. And if that's effective for you, then most of our people use people in the church. It doesn't mean they shouldn't have a discipler or something, but for this journey of their lives, they need somebody that's going to walk with them. And so I'll talk about that some more later. In Motion is not a pull-out ministry either. So when people come to In Motion, we actually call them to be more involved in their Bible talks and more involved in their house churches.
Amen.
We don't do any mentoring per se or discipling at In Motion. Our group is a supportive group in nature. But we call them to make more meaning out of what the church says is very important. A couple years ago in Denver, they said, okay, here we go. We're going to have everybody back with a discipler. So it took about a year to get everybody kind of tied in.
Nice.
That's really good, but that's on paper.
Sure.
What is really happening is what we start pushing
Sorry, bud.
into. We start getting into what's really happening. So Rick had to get back involved in meaningful relationships for him to get better. And the end of the story with Rick is he's doing really well. He actually had a relapse a while back, but even relapses we use as teaching tools. We don't get perfect. We don't do graduations, by the way, either at In Motion. We don't strut people up on the stage and say, hey, here I am. I'm all good now. We just don't do that. We think it's really bad for people. It doesn't help them. It puts a lot of pressure on them. And it makes them the focus. We try not to let people be the focus. My leaders in In Motion have been through recovery, but they're not perfect guys either. We still struggle with stuff. And so we don't glorify and hold up people. We really don't. We try not to. We try to encourage others with what we've done. And we, some of our people that go through In Motion get to do communions and share their testimony. But even then, they do it in a very humble, weak way. Does that make sense? A weak way?
Yeah.
Like, here's what God's done for me. Here's how I've changed. By the grace of God, this has happened. But we don't want to hold people up. And I just a side note, you can take this for what it is. I think our baptisms are like that in a bad way. I think sometimes we baptize people and we make it all about them and how great they are and how much they've changed and everything. And I think sometimes it's really damaging to people to stand there and be held up so high. It's a lot of pressure. And there's a metaphor, not a metaphor, but an example a preacher used years ago, which I'll end on, and we'll take a little break. This guy said there's a teenager who'd been studying the Bible and he wanted to become a Christian. This is back when they had the Going Forward song. Remember those things? What are they called? Altar calls. Yeah. And they'd sing Just As I Am about 900 times in a row. Remember that? Woo!
Come on, somebody
going.
Yeah.
And
You almost went up so they quit singing.
yeah, exactly. We can get everybody up there. Hurry up, come on, I gotta get lunch. But I love the story about this young teenage kid that was ready to be baptized. And the preacher said the kid cried all the way up to the altar. He cried all the way back into the dressing room. He cried as he walked into the water. He cried going into the water. He cried coming up out of the water. And I love that picture of humility, of our view of who God is in our lives and what He does in our lives. That we're here as His humble servants. So with that, I'm going to end for a few minutes. Just take a little break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about In Motion, some of the structures, and it'll be an interactive talk. So have your questions ready to go, and we'll go then. Thanks. Hey, Steve.
Tim.
Brother. Gosh.